So I thought we could continue.
Now there is no sound.
How strange.
Oh, now we can hear you. We can hear
Now
you.
you can hear me? Yeah, but I haven't changed anything.
Yes.
And I feel
Yeah.
myself
No,
going blurrier and blurrier.
No, you seem
Seems
fine. No, the screen is fine.
Okay, all right. So I thought we could continue along the same line as last week, as last day, where you remember we were talking about co-creation and how everything you think and do and feel and say, etc., is part of this co-creative process. And that therefore it's very important that all of those things be very, that you pay very close attention to them at all times, which of course in turn means that you have to be as conscious and aware as possible in order to pay close attention to all these things. So moving in that direction, we can talk about all your daily teachers. Because of course, every single thing that happens during the course of your day is part of this process where you can refine and hone the things that you are co-creating. So if I become impatient today, maybe I have to wait, I don't know, sometimes at lunchtime, if we all decide we all want lunch at the same time, those of us that are in the house, there can, which normally doesn't happen, but it can happen. And I'm just giving this as an example. And if I get impatient because I can't get in at that moment, and that might be my correct time slot to go in and make my lunch. Lunch is our quick meal here. Then that impatience of mine has to immediately be used, not only for me to become aware of it, right, that I have become impatient, but also for me to work on it, hone it, improve my impatience, become a little bit less impatient, understand that the impatience comes from me, the responsibility for the impatience is mine, and not the circumstances that are creating a little bit of a delay in whatever it is I had planned, and use that as a bit of my spiritual practice at that particular moment in order to co-create in a better way, as we said last time. Co-create in a better way. Why? Because I am contributing to a better energy in the universe, in the world, in our global community. Just because I'm working on my impatience as I get into the kitchen, right? You might think that's so silly, because of course it all adds up, right? So I read at one point something about called householder yogis. And, a yogi, especially in India, is typically somebody that goes out and lives alone and begs and tries to live as spiritual a life as possible by giving up material goods and wealth and comforts and family and so on and so forth. So that's one thing, right? And none of us are doing that, and nor would I wish to be honest. I have no desire to do something like that. However, these householder yogis, these are men and women in India with an unshakable commitment to their spiritual path. But guess what? They've decided to have a family rather than live in a cave or an ashram. And so they're called householder yogis because they choose to grow and evolve through their experiences at home and at work, embracing the challenges of everyday life as the means for their transformation. And of course, you understand by now, the transformation that you achieve with yourself is that which contributes to the greater overall energy, global energy, frequency as in this co-creative process. So it's kind of funny, when you think about it. They choose a normal life in order to grow spiritually through the normal life, instead of becoming somebody that goes off to an ashram. And personally, I think in a way it might even be easier to live the quiet monastic life in an ashram as opposed to that of the family, because of course it is precisely in the lap of our families where we have the greatest challenges. People will frequently talk about what happens, at Christmas, what happens at Thanksgiving, and these family rituals where grown adult children will come back home and spend a few days with their siblings, respective partners, and their parents in the old parental home, or the former parental home. And how so many, they just hate this. It is such a period of strife. And there were several movies made about this. One in particular I recall was, I think it was a Woody Allen movie. Anybody help me here? Was it Hannah and Her Sisters or something like that? And I believe it was about a Thanksgiving or Christmas reunion of the family. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, it's worth your while. But there are a couple of others like that are, they're not meant so much to be comedies, nor are they meant to be horrendous dramas that just, are tiresome. But they are meant to be eye-openers in the sense of the kind of thing that can happen when the family gets together. And of course, those are incredible challenges and incredible opportunities for growth and transformation and learning how to live spiritually, and in the process, co-creating better. And, by the way, I smile as I say all these things, you can believe me. I am not anywhere near there in my own life, but I do recognize that those are precisely the challenges that are worthwhile working on and worthwhile staying with them, as opposed to throwing up your hands and saying, oh, this is too much for me. And I know a lot of people have opted out of these family holidays in recent years. And instead of going to the family for Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever the family festivities are, they will, go on a holiday, on a foreign holiday, which, well, nowadays you can't do that anyway, at least until this thing is in a different situation. So, of course, it's true that a lot of us believe that the way to spiritual growth is because we meditate, because we go to mindfulness retreats, and because we become inspired by very wise luminaries, whose talks we listen to on YouTube. Isn't YouTube wonderful? Or read their books, or purchase the seminars, because again, there are so many wonderful things available that are, when you think about what you're getting, they are so cheap. And yet, one of the greatest teachers that you could ever hope to learn from is living right under your roof, especially if that person often pushes your buttons. So I'm not saying that you should lose your sight of your healthy boundaries, nor am I saying you should lose sight of your healthy self-love. But I am saying, be careful before you say to yourself, oh, this is simply a question of boundaries. It may be, but even if it is a question of boundaries, this is your path to growth. Why do you have somebody in your life who is trespassing your boundaries? Is it just as simple as getting rid of that person and finding yourself a new person, if it's a partner, husband, wife, but even if it's a sibling, a parent, a child, adult child, is it simply as simple as getting rid of that person and finding somebody else to substitute them? Or is it that there is something to be learned here? So of course, just as you would not spend all your free hours, or at least I hope you wouldn't, all your free hours binging on a Netflix series or Hulu or, you know, HBO and so on series. You would spend a portion of your time doing that, especially now in lockdown, but you would spend a portion of your free time as well giving yourself another kind of food, another kind of vitamin, if you like. And so, of course, it is, let's say you are living with somebody who's very challenging. So yeah, spend a portion of your time working on improving this situation, or on understanding better why you are being provoked inside of yourself, why you can't hold on to yourself, why you can't self-regulate, or how you could respond differently, again, without losing sight of healthy boundaries. But then, you know, you get to have free time. You don't have to be doing this 24/7. And even if it is a marital relationship, or anything except a very, very small baby, you have the total right to, you know, expect that you can have time alone. So you may say, you know, okay, I need to go and read for a while now, and I'm going to go down to whatever room you have that you could be doing this in, and I'm going to close the door, and it's not because I don't want to be with you, I just like to read alone, or something like that. So you know, you like I said in the example of the Netflix films and the binging, you do some of that some of the time, which would be the rising to the challenge of that which is in your living circumstances. But then you would take some time off, and you would go and do something different in order to recharge your batteries, and in order to breathe a little bit because of the situation that's happening. So and of course, you know, I've told this story, I think, it's not so much a story as an observation, on a number of occasions. People will come from a retreat, an ashram, a special kind of seminar at which they have been greatly inspired and motivated. And they'll come home, and, you know, whatever is awaiting for them at home. And then perhaps they'll run into me, or they'll come and have a session, or I know them personally and they'll tell me something, or they'll send me an email. And the gist of it often is, oh, it was so wonderful being at the ashram retreat, whatever. But of course, when I got home, because they don't do that, or because they don't practice these things, or they don't believe in these things, at home it's awful. It's only me that is like this. And of course, the answer to that is, it's kind of like almost like a joke. Well, hello, you know, that which you were imbibing, were learning in the ashram, in the silent retreat, or focusing on, and so on and so forth, is how to apply that part of you to that which happens in your home. And yes, of course, if the other party isn't on board with some of the things you believe in, nevertheless, it is on you to apply your newfound understanding, and you know, this idea of co-creation to that which also occurs in the home. You can't wait until other people become like you want them to become. Sure, if they are never interested in any of this, it might become a deal breaker. I've often said, if I were ever to run into somebody again on the level of having a relationship with someone, for me, it would be a total deal breaker if they were not also interested in personal growth and spiritual transformation and so on and so forth. But that's now. I mean, I would be starting out from zero. So it's very easy to put all those kind of expectations into the picture. But when you're already in a relationship with someone, in a marriage, or these are your siblings, or these are your parents, or your long, year friends that you've known forever and ever, you cannot, just because you are changing doesn't mean they're going to be changing. And the only thing you can do is apply the process by which you are changing to your new responses to all of these people. And by that, I don't mean preach to them, just behave in a more aware and a more conscious, more compassionate and kinder way. That's it. That's all you can do. And then, you know, and then you see how it goes on. Remember that famous quotation, before enlightenment, before you become enlightened, cut wood, carry water. After enlightenment, cut wood, carry water. In other words, continue with your daily life. The same way you were continuing with your daily life before all of these things happened to you, you need to also continue with your daily life after. The difference being, of course, that assuming you have become at least partially, slightly, somewhat enlightened, spiritually transformed, more compassionate, more kind, more present, more conscious, then of course you need to apply that to that very sometimes onerous daily life that you're living in. So we come again to the fact that I'm just checking to see if there's somebody telling me. Oh dear, yes, hang on one second. Here is Pixie that didn't get the news about the password. Let's see who has the password. I know who has the password, that I can find it quickly, I mean, because it's weird numbers that I don't have in my head. Sorry, here, I'll give this to her. There she goes. Okay, so I've lost my train of thought. So you have to consider from the moment of waking up to the moment your head hits the pillow at night as part of your process of honing, transforming, growing your spirituality. That is where you live your spiritual life, in all those moments. In all those moments. And that includes, you know, going shopping, going to the bank, dealing with the stupid phone call from your telephone company, dealing with your children, dealing with your siblings, dealing with your partner, dealing with your work colleagues, dealing with cabin fever, the way many are right now. By the way, as I was looking to see who was trying to get through to me about the password, I saw another WhatsApp that arrived. This is for Clarice and Rowan, and I don't know who else from Marbella is on. You do pass to phase 1. So this using of continual elements that are there to stymie you, yes? Remember that wonderful phrase by Thich Nhat Hanh, no mud, no lotus. Yes? How are you going to become a lotus if there is no mud? I personally believe it's not possible to really grow unless we have some kind of testing process, testing mechanism. And of course, and this is so fascinating, I find, and you know, I know it's not the first time I say it, but the testing mechanism, so you know, when you are tested the very first time, way back, say when you're learning how to write letters, and they say to you, okay, the test today will be that you write A, B, and C without looking at the shape of what they're supposed to look like, right? You write it from memory. And so that's your big test. And you write A and a B and a C. And yet, at that age, and especially when you're not used to being tested, it might be a big deal. I personally don't remember having such a test, but anyway, whatever. But of course, when a few months later, you're asked to do the entire alphabet, it's kind of easy because you're already in a role, you've already kind of learned a number of these things. So where the ABC might have been quite difficult, the A to Z one a few months later, or however quickly it goes, will probably be very quick. Now that's a wonderful analogy to use for our spiritual growth. So you have a challenge in life, who knows at what age, and it's a big one for you, and we never compare, okay? So what may have been huge for one person may be very tiny for the other person, but the other person might find something very huge that the first person found simple to deal with. You know, we're all different. So please don't ever compare your challenges to another person's challenges, because you don't know how they deal and how they feel about their challenges. So you come across at some point in your life a big one, okay? And this big one, whatever it may be, health, finances, relationships, you know, somebody's death, this big one, let's say for the sake of analogy, the sake of argument, costs you 7 years to fully assimilate, to recognize the growth that came to you from it. 7 years. And let's say that at the end of those 7 years, or maybe a year after that, you have another very large challenge, unrelated, totally different kind of thing, but it's a big one too. And if you actually did some of the work on yourself in that first challenge, even if you weren't yet talking this particular kind of language, but you know, you thought your way through it. We're not idiots. And long before we know these things, we also know other things, and those other things might be coming from a slightly different direction, but we think, right? And we don't just blame circumstances or others or make ourselves out to be victims. Yes, some people do, but not everybody. So let's say that you did some of that, and like I say, you came out of it after 7 years, and then a year later you have this new challenge. You think that new challenge is going to take you 7 years. It might take you 6 months. It might take you 2 years. But then when the third challenge comes, and again, something totally unrelated, that one might take you a month. And when I say a month, I'm not talking about solving the thing that is a challenge, because it could have been, one might have been a health issue, or like I say, the bereavement, that somebody died. It might be a lost job. And the second one, so you can't, I mean, sure, you can find a new job, but perhaps the loss of the first job was huge with regards to your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your self-respect, or perhaps the death of that beloved person was very difficult for you to overcome, and you can't replace that beloved person. So when I say that it took you 7 years, and then maybe 2, and then maybe a month or whatever to get over the things, it's not because during that time you were solving the actual problem. You were resolving the thing inside of you in such a way that at the end of that time, you were basically back at a very good, if not better, state of inner equilibrium and harmony, and so on and so forth. So the fact that the third, in my example, big challenge in your life only took you a month, and perhaps another one a little further down the road only took you hours. I mean, this is growth. This is growth. And this is where your inner ability to deal with things in your life through mindfulness, through a very healthy self-dialogue, through self-regulation, through an interest in understanding how challenges can move us forward, and so many other things that we could add into the, you know, the big picture of this, that show you how far you have progressed, that show you that you are light years from where you were when you had that first challenge. And now let me add something else to that. You remember one day we talked about Deepak Chopra. Today, I believe, is number 26, by the way, and that Deepak Chopra one might have been number 3. And it's only been about, I believe, 10 weeks, you know, that we've been doing this. So Deepak Chopra was talking about how swiftly the physical body changes. So bones take longer, but you never have, like the bones I have now are not simply older bones than the ones I had when I was, born, and that then grew into however tall and big I am as an adult. But they totally changed. The new bone cells were made over the course of years. I can't remember how long bones take, could be 7 years. But other parts of your body change from day to day, and some take a month. But every single part of your body is renewed. So he kind of was joking, and he says, I'm still me, but this is my 2020 version of my body. This is not, this is just a reminder telling me we have 10 minutes left. I am the 2020 version that you see here talking to you, but the body, well, that was my jacket. The body is not my when I was born body. It is the 2020 version. So when you go back to this rapid growth with challenges, as each challenge occurs, you get through it, you transition through it more quickly each time. And remember, I'm not talking about resolving it. I'm talking about how you're dealing with it inside of you, and how quickly you get back to a state of harmony and equanimity. All of that means that the inner part of you, the one that is not this, has indeed also progressed and moved forward. Your body does, but so does that. And that is, to my mind, the thing that is worthwhile. And if that is the thing that is worthwhile, why are we not putting more emphasis in our world on doing that kind of transformation and understanding how these things work and helping people move in that direction, as opposed to the things we pay so much attention to, which of course have much more to do with getting ahead materially, or with power, or with status, or with how we are respected in our communities because of whatever we have achieved. So, when I see kids like that young Swedish girl, isn't she, Greta Thunberg? When I see kids like her, and when I see so many other reports, or the young Pakistani girl, Mahali, or I can't remember her exact name. Remember, she was shot because she wanted girls to go to school in Pakistan, and she was barely 16, I believe, when she came out of all of that and got or participated in getting the Nobel Peace Prize. Do you think either of those two girls, the Greta or the Mahali, are interested in being influencers on Instagram, showing off their tiny waists and their big lips and in poses? And I'm not denigrating that. Don't misunderstand me. What I'm trying to point out here is we are not, as a society, giving the kind of things to look up to emulate, to wish for ourselves. We're not doing that because what we're basically doing is telling people it's so important to have a really great house and a really great car and brand name clothes and be important and make yourself safe for the rest of your life. But by the way, there is another big topic. What is this business about the rest of your life, right? Some of you are way younger than me, so the rest of your life potentially is a lot more than the rest of mine. But hey, we all know it's finite. One day it gets us all. So why aren't we talking about that? I don't mean morbidly and making people feel bad, but I do mean talking about it with young people, talking about it in open ways that make it a topic of conversation. You know, when back in the 70s, you were barely beginning to be able to talk about so-called spiritual and esoteric subjects. Finally, it came out on the table. In the 60s, you were finally being able to talk about sex and birth control pill and sexual freedom because the pill had been invented. And women were getting out into the labor market. And in the 70s, this esoteric thing came out. And then it wasn't until the very late 80s, early 90s that you were able to, without people laughing at you, although they even to this day sometimes do, talking about the body-mind connection. And only now, although there have been many pioneers, is there really a big movement and push towards talking about death, all aspects of death. I mean, way distant death. I talk about death with my grandchildren, not in a way, quite not to frighten them, quite the contrary, to make them think about it as a huge adventure, and that eventually all will come to, you know, and a transformation process. I try not to stick ideas into their heads, spiritual ideas, because that wouldn't be fair. But I do try to make sure the topic is something they feel comfortable with. So my granddaughter says to me, she's in my bedroom and she's looking at something. She says, "Oh, when you die, can I have that?" Which of course is the result of me talking about these things. And so of course I say to her, "Yes, you may." At any rate, I kind of got off there with the topic of death and all these other things that came up from the 60s and 70s and so on. But if we want to create a society more and more and more that moves in this co-creative direction where everyone puts emphasis on it contributing to the energy of the planet, then of course we have to give a different kind of example than the one we are typically giving. And I think that's more or less it for today. We have 3 minutes left.